Australian history is a complex tapestry woven from the threads of Indigenous cultures, colonial endeavours, and modern nationhood. The story begins with the arrival of the First Peoples, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, who have inhabited the continent for over 65,000 years. These communities developed rich cultures, languages, and spiritual connections to the land, shaping their identity through a profound relationship with nature. The arrival of European explorers in the 17th century marked a significant turning point in Australian history. Notably, Dutch navigator Willem Janszoon was the first recorded European to set foot on Australian soil in 1606, paving the way for future exploration. However, it wasn't until the arrival of the British in 1770 that the course of Australian history changed irrevocably. Captain James Cook's landing at Botany Bay was a catalyst for British colonization, which began in 1788 with the establishment of the penal colony at Sydney Cove. This marked the beginning of a period characterized by the displacement and suffering of Indigenous peoples, whose lands were appropriated without consent. As the British expanded their settlements, conflicts erupted between colonizers and Indigenous communities, leading to violent confrontations and significant loss of life. The introduction of new diseases, to which Indigenous populations had no immunity, further decimated their numbers and disrupted their traditional ways of life. Throughout the 19th century, Australia underwent significant transformation as free settlers arrived, driven by the promise of land and opportunity. The discovery of gold in the 1850s sparked a massive influx of immigrants, propelling economic growth and fostering a multicultural society. This era also saw the rise of nationalism, as Australians began to forge a distinct identity separate from their British roots. The push for self-governance gained momentum, leading to the establishment of the Commonwealth of Australia in 1901. This federation brought together the 6 separate colonies, creating a unified nation while still grappling with the legacy of colonization. The early 20th century was marked by Australia's involvement in global conflicts, including World War I and World War II, which profoundly affected the national consciousness. The Anzac spirit, born from the experiences of Australian and New Zealand soldiers, became a cornerstone of Australian identity. Post-war Australia experienced significant social and economic changes, including increased immigration and the rise of the welfare state. The 1960s and 1970s heralded a new era of social reform, with movements advocating for Indigenous rights gaining momentum. The 1967 referendum, which allowed Indigenous Australians to be counted in the census and for the federal government to legislate on their behalf, was a pivotal moment in the fight for equality. Despite these advances, the struggle for recognition and reconciliation continues, as Indigenous Australians seek acknowledgement of their history and rights. The Mabwa decision in 1992 and the subsequent Native Title Act were landmark rulings that recognized the land rights of Indigenous peoples, challenging the foundations of colonial land law. As Australia entered the 21st century, it faced new challenges, including climate change, economic inequality, and the need to address historical injustices. The ongoing dialogue about reconciliation, represented by initiatives such as the Uluru Statement from the Heart, seeks to bridge the divide between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Today, Australian history is not merely a record of events, but a living narrative that shapes the nation's identity and informs its future. Acknowledging this complex past is crucial for building a more inclusive and equitable society. As Australia continues to evolve, it must confront the legacies of colonization while embracing the rich diversity that defines its present.